How we doing there, boys and girls? Mantis here, and welcome back to another video. So yeah, you've read the title, you've probably seen the thumbnail. Nearly 35 million gold in sales since the launch of Shadowlands. I want to use this next, hopefully only 10-15 minutes maybe, to talk to you about exactly how that process went, what I had to do to get to that position, and more importantly, hopefully try and share some of my experiences with you for if you want to try and replicate the same thing. Now, one thing I am very aware of is this is a situation that cannot easily be repeated. It's very, very dependent on a few factors being in place. You only get this sort of zerg of auction house activity once every couple of expansions. And the beginning of Shadowlands was kind of an exception to the rule because we had a huge, and I mean monumentally huge, new system for crafters in the form of the legendaries, the crafted base legendary items. And you will see very quickly that that was heavily my focus from day one. But I suppose if you've seen the thumbnail and you've seen the title, you probably want some verification this is not just another one of those YouTube clickbait videos. No, here is the graph in-game, no Photoshop, no clickbait, since the beginning of Shadowlands. So in the last month, I have sold nearly 35 million gold worth of sales on the auction house, for an average of over 1.2 million gold a day. This is pretty ridiculous numbers. Just to give you some clarity to the situation, at the end of Battle for Azeroth, you were kind of lucky if you could achieve anywhere in the realms of between 6,000 to 10,000 gold an hour, doing like raw gold farms, running old instances, that sort of stuff. That was really the upper threshold of what you could feasibly achieve. This just shows the power of crafting. Now, one thing you will notice is, as it stands right now, you can see my expenses. This isn't 35 million gold in my bags. No, not at all. That is not 35 million gold in my bags. That is 34,791 million gold worth of actual sales. But you can see by the graph, we started with not a lot, and we're very, very rapidly increasing now. So I wanted to talk through this process, where I started, what my mindset was going into Shadowlands, and like I said, hopefully impart some of my experiences onto you guys so you can maybe look at trying to replicate this at least in some fashion. So let's talk about the first week then. You'll see that I actually went into Shadowlands with very little gold available. Around 1.4 million gold was what I had in terms of liquid gold. And you'll hear me talk a few times through this video that actually maintaining a high liquid gold number is not really the most sensible thing to do. If you've got gold just sitting around in your bags, it's not doing anything for you. It's not really any point it being there. So you'll see that there are many, many occasions where my liquid gold goes down to some very scarily low numbers, to the point where I had less than 200,000 gold at some points, according to TSM's register, or 240,000 gold appears to be the lowest amount of gold I ever went down to. So you can see I was very, very heavily reinvesting virtually every single sale that I made, taking the revenue from that sale, crafting new items to sell new items. But what did we do? Well, we sold a hell of a lot of legendary items. Easily, by far, my biggest sales have been the base legendary items as a whole. We go to revenue very quickly. You'll see if I scroll down this list, that literally 90%, I would say. I'm relatively confident in saying about 90% of the sales came specifically from base legendary items, which is, you'll see a few BOEs floating around in there, but my primary focus has pretty much solely been on selling these base legendary items. This was a system that came in right at the very beginning of Shadowlands, and it's nothing like what we've ever really seen before. In previous expansions, we've had like rep grinds to obtain patterns. We've had like a ranking system, but that was kind of heavily linked to PvP and PvP crafted gear, so it required you to run battlegrounds, run arenas to get marks of Conquest, no, what were they called? Marks of Honor, and you would use those Marks of Honor to buy the next reps. It was kind of more of a PvP oriented thing. This is the first time we've had a truly PvP progression based system for a long time in the game. They have been before, but nothing to quite the degree that we've seen this time. So what did I do? Let's take it back and let's just go over a few of the. Let's take it week by week, and I'll explain what it was I did and some of the issues I came across. So you'll see the very first week of the game, roughly this period here, my gold just plummeted like an absolute rock. This was because of a couple of reasons. Firstly, I made it my utmost goal to make sure that I got a couple of characters to level 60 relatively quickly. I knew that getting those characters to 60 was of like super importance to me. My main character had jewel crafting and leatherworking. Hey, we're selling legendaries even now. My main character had leatherworking and jewel crafting, and those two professions I foresaw from some testing on the beta. I thought that they were going to be very, very strong professions. Little did I know just quite how expensive leatherworking was going to turn out to be. But equally, I had the heads up that these two professions were going to be really strong. They were, fortunately for me, they were on my main character as well. So I grinded out that first level 60, I got that character to 60, I got that character through Torghast, I unlocked the legendary recipes, and my first focus was on jewel crafting. I spent virtually the entire first week focusing almost solely on jewel crafting. And if we go into the ledger and we look at some of the revenue, and we go back to sort of the first few days of the expansion, we go back 26, 27 days, you can see the things I was selling for the most part was quick Oxane rings, masterful Phaedron rings. This was the heyday of jewel crafting. It was those first couple of days where you could make some ludicrous amounts of gold just by getting some Leystrite ore, prospecting it, crafting some jewellery and selling it. It was an absolute gold mine. And a lot of gold was very easily obtained the first few days. Now, there's an interesting story to be told about jewel crafting. Because something happened with jewel crafting that turned it from what I foresaw to be one of the most profitable professions to arguably the least profitable profession, literally overnight. And that very simply was when Blizzard came in and they made some nerfs to some of the vendor shuffles that were found. Myself and some other YouTubers made it relatively apparent that you could gain a lot of gold very, very quickly from getting materials from out in the world, crafting them into an item, and then straight up selling them to a vendor. It was meaning that Leystrite ore, for example, had a price floor of about 12 gold. Shrouded cloth had a price floor of, I think, 8 gold. Desolate leather also had a price floor at a very similar point, and if you go check your auction house now, you'll see the actual today price of those materials is like literally less than 2 gold. Maybe not Leystrite so much, but the cloth and the leather is now arguably always under 2 gold a piece. Blizzard came in and made these changes, and it completely flipped a switch on jewel crafting. It made the fact that the price was being held at this 12 gold point for Leystrite. It meant that the actual cost of making the legendary rings was relatively high, as prospecting the Leystrite ore to get the essences to make the legendaries resulted in them being pretty expensive, and there was very, very few people that were getting up the ranks. Rank 1s and 2s I had obviously, well, rank 1s you obviously get instantly, but rank 2s in both the ring and the neck I got very quickly, and over the next few days at the beginning of the expansion I power leveled both the ring and the neck to rank 4. I went into the first reset of the game where people were actually going to get enough soul ash to start buying legendaries with both rank 4, basically jewel crafting complete. And it was at that exact point that Blizzard turned around and was like, "Whoa, no! These vendor shuffles. These are too fancy, too juicy," and they squashed them completely. But what that had the effect of is it dropped the price of Leystrite ore from that 12 gold point that it was being held at to like 2-3 gold on most servers, like literally overnight. And what that meant is that basically jewel crafting, the super high cost that I had spent, the ludicrous amounts of gold I'd invested to get jewel crafting to rank 4 in the first week, basically meant I'd overpaid for every single item that I'd crafted. And this was something that, this comes to one of the points I've noted down, that Blizzard at any point can jump in, can make changes to the game, and it can completely screw with you. This alone is one reason why sometimes power leveling professions or investing heavy in certain markets is really kind of risky. Because you just don't know what Blizzard are going to do, and they come in, they swoop in, and they change a whole bunch of things overnight. Hot fixes come in left, right, and centre, and you're kind of left. I was left with half a guild bank worth of jewel crafting rings and necklaces that I'd paid literally 3 times more than what they were now selling for on the auction house. This led me very, very quickly after the first few days. If we scroll down past the first few days, you'll see there comes a point about a week in where not only is the price of the jewel crafting stuff just completely tanked, but you'll see there comes a point where, let's see if I can find it, it's about a week into the expansion, maybe 10 days into the expansion. Eternal Crystal starts selling, and then it switches. Yeah, so actually, yeah, about a week into the expansion, my focus switches very, very quickly. I start selling Shadowghast ingots, I start selling missives, I start selling other items, namely things like leatherworking. Leatherworking was the other profession that I had on my main character, and I switched my focus. Admittedly, I was what I would consider late to the party with leatherworking. Considering the expense of leatherworking right now, I was very late to it. It was nearly 10 days into the expansion before I really started focusing on it, and there was a lot of people already on my realm that had rank 2s and 3s in leatherworking, which we'll see in a minute would have been vital to have had at that point. Yeah, I was kind of late because I'd focused on jewel crafting. I'd flipped a coin, I'd chosen heads, and it had landed tails for me. I was just unlucky on that one because of some Blizzard changes. But switching my focus very quickly, I actually needed revenue at this point. I needed just lots and lots of revenue at this point. I needed lots of small bits of profit so that I could get a big chunk of gold available. Because if we actually look at the dashboard, about a week to 10 days in, I had no gold. I was literally broke at this point. And it was at this point I decided, right, I need to switch something up. I started selling off as many of my materials as possible, and that's what caused this first initial spike here. I got a whole bunch of revenue back, and I was able to then invest that into leatherworking primarily, but also switching in. I'd got my blacksmith to 60 at that point as well, so I kind of had most of the legendary crafting professions up and running. I was investing pretty heavily in blacksmithing, buying all of the Elysium ore I could get my hands on. I had a big issue though. My big issue was I just did not have enough liquid gold. Every time I got 500k gold from some sales, I then had to spend that 500 gold straight away in buying more materials to craft more items to try and get my ranks up in these professions. This was a real big bottleneck for me, and I only managed to overcome this bottleneck. Well, you can probably tell when I started to overcome the material bottleneck, it was about here. It wasn't about till maybe almost 3 weeks into the expansion, I started completing professions. I'd powered through blacksmithing. I'd done as much as I humanly could within the means of the gold that I had available with leatherworking. I started getting like rank 2s in some mail pieces. I think the Bone Shatter helms and the Bone Shatter shoulders were 2 pieces I leveled up to rank 3 really quickly, and they were really good sellers for me. I could basically craft them and sell them all day long. But it wasn't really until only about maybe a week to 10 days ago that things started to be in place, and I was able to just churn out legendaries like crazy. If you actually look at the last week, in the last month we did 35 million gold. In the last week we did 17 of that. We literally did half of the amount of sales in the last 7 days. This has showed you just the crazy level of sales that have been able to be made off these legendary items. It's really bonkers. So yeah, I just wanted to sort of give you that brief overview of what I've been doing to get to that point, because I think there's a few interesting lessons to learn. The big first lesson to me is that it's very possible for Blizzard to dive in, make a change, and it completely pull the rug from out underneath your feet, which is why investing so heavily in something, I say this 20 times a day on my stream, but investing all of your gold into a profession is really, really risky. Not because you do anything wrong, but because this is a game, something can change, and that is exactly what happened to me. It took me back to virtually zero. Luckily, I had a few items I could sell, but I was having to sell all of those items at a massive loss just to regenerate some gold. It was a bit of a difficult time through this period, at least. So yeah, I mean, it was a bit of a crazy time, that's all I can say. But the last couple of weeks has been just ludicrous. You were able to sell, if you're happy to sit in the auction house and play the auction house game, cancel, undercut, repost, rescan, all of this sort of business, you could literally print gold at this point. It's absolutely bonkers. A couple of things I noted down that I thought would be really helpful to you guys is that, firstly, you gotta have a whole bunch of gold to be able to make more gold. I know full well that going into Shadowlands with 1.4 million gold wasn't enough to do what I wanted to do, which was to get all of the legendaries to rank 4. That was my goal. That was my long-term achievement. I'm kind of getting there. I'm close, just for reference. I'll show you what I've been using religiously. And it's a spreadsheet. This is just my restock spreadsheet, but it shows you what I've achieved with the professions. So tailoring, maxed. Rank 4s across the board. Blacksmithing, same again. Jewel crafting, as we've spoke about, maxed all the way across. Leatherworking, though, is an absolute goddamn nightmare to level up right now, just because the materials are so expensive. And there was about 7 days where doesn't matter how much gold I had, there just wasn't the materials there to buy, which was kind of crazy. Which is why even at this point, even after 35 million gold in sales, you can see that the mail armor I'm able to produce is still sat at rank 1s. I've still got a lot of work to do with those. That is definitely the case. This is going to be my achievement come the new year, to get everything to rank 4. But I'm also very aware now that the profits, or the markets and the amount of other people that are getting to this position is going to make the adventure to rank 4 across everything. I'm probably not going to make any gold by doing it, so I've got a 50-50 whether I just cash in on tailoring, blacksmithing and jewel crafting from this point on. But hey, we'll see what happens. Stay subscribed, stick around, you'll find out. But yeah, you've got to have that gold to make gold. That's one of the key things. If I'd come into Shadowlands with like 3 million gold, I could have invested in more than just that one profession straight away, and I wouldn't have hopefully left myself in this weird situation where I had no gold. Blizzard had made a big change, they pulled the rug out from underneath me, and I had to completely change my strategy. Another big tip that I want to give you guys, I know I've left all of the big tips towards the end of the video, but that's going to benefit you guys that have stuck through me rambling for 18 minutes now. The second big tip I want to give you is never ever assume that something won't sell. We went into the first couple of weeks of the Legendary game assuming that people weren't going to buy rank 4s. And people thought it was crazy to power up to rank 4 because, well, nobody can use that rank 4 item. Why would anybody buy it? But people bought them. Whether it be through lack of knowledge about how the system works, or maybe it was just people planning way ahead in the future, we don't really know. But people bought them. People bought rank 3s, people bought rank 4s. Never assume that somebody won't buy something, and that goes for pricing things as well. One of the things I noticed is a lot of the time on my live stream I'd get asked the question that I'm lucky, I'm the only one on my server with rank X in item Y. How much should I list it for? And the common response that we kind of came up to creatively as a stream was think of a big number and then double it. Simply because you can never truly understand just how much gold some other people on your server have and how much they're willing to spend on an item if that item's available to them. This was something that I kind of knew previously, but I definitely learned this playing with the legendaries over the last couple of weeks, that If you have a market cornered, there is nothing wrong with posting an item for a ludicrous amount of gold. Worst that's going to happen is it's not going to sell, and in a few days later you post it slightly cheaper and then it does start to sell. There is rarely a case where posting something too high is a negative. So think of a big number and then double it was the strategy we came to. This brings me on to the third point that I wanted to really emphasize, and that is that liquid gold is a waste of gold. If you sit and you have got 10 million gold in your bags, that 10 million gold is not doing anything. It's useless to you. Don't invest and don't spend all of it, but make your gold make you more gold. And that's one of the biggest tips I can give out to you. And it's kind of why I really wished I had more gold at the beginning, because it would have meant that I could have invested more gold and I could have got out of this lull of having to heavily invest in professions, and I could have started this upward trend and this upward spike of profit building a lot quicker and a lot sooner. So make the gold that you have work for you is really crucial. Last point, a dedicated auction house toon was almost vital to this operation. I genuinely do not think I could have done this with just one single account. If I'd have tried to achieve this with just one single account, I would have had to have been sharing my time between different tasks. And by that I mean I kind of needed a single character constantly in the auction house to be able to buy materials when I needed, to constantly be scanning the auction house to see if there's any good deals coming up on things I should be sniping, and to be cancelling and relisting auctions. Those three tasks alone were basically required myself to have a dedicated account, which is exactly what you see this account is. This dude has not left this spot for probably about 3.5 weeks now. It was crucial. Basically it meant that my main account would be my crafting account and my second account would just literally be my selling account, my auction house account. Now you may ask that, well, I don't want to pay for the game twice, but quite simply the amount of gold that I made by having that second account would have paid for the account and 5 years worth of game time. It was not an expense in any way, shape or form. I could have bought it with gold. It would have paid for itself many, many times over. It was an absolute godsend having a second account, and I would definitely recommend, even if you were super wealthy and bought the long boy and have a running, walking, dinosaur-based auction house, that's cool. Definitely, it's cool, but it's definitely no substitute to be able to be running two separate accounts at the same time. Having one dude standing crafting Shadowghast ingots whilst the other dude is cancel scanning and relisting, godsend. Absolute godsend. And so my final thoughts on this for you guys, and a few tips to leave you with, is one of the biggest questions I see is, should I be getting into legendaries right now? My honest answer, and this is not because I'm just trying to corner a market and be a greedy goblin, this is my honest answer to people that are thinking about getting into the legendary game now. I'm sorry, but it's just not really that viable. There are going to be too many people already on your server that have got rank 3s and 4s in all of the slots, and the cost to you to level up to that point right now is astronomical. For one, to really emphasize that, let me show you my expenses on just one material. Callous hide. Callous hide has easily been my biggest expense throughout this entire expansion so far. Over 13.5 million gold I have spent in the last 30 days on buying callous hide, or the heavy variation of it. That is the amount of gold that I've pumped into just part of the materials for leatherworking. And as you saw, I've not even got leatherworking complete at this point. My leatherworking is not even 50% complete right now. For me to max out leatherworking on my realm, it would probably cost me somewhere in the region of 30 million gold just in the callous hide. It's ludicrous to even be able to do that. And the problem is if you're trying to step into it right now, you're going to be way behind. So it's really not going to be an opportunity. I would love to have made this video in a fashion so that you guys could go away and try and replicate this exact thing right now, but the God's honest truth is that if you try to replicate it right now, you're going to struggle, and the likelihood is you're actually going to end up losing more gold than than making gold. I really want you guys to try and take away from this video the fact that you've got to be ahead of the game with gold making. Expansion launches, crucial time to be making gold. Patch launches, so when 9.1 comes out, there'll be a new zerg of gold to be made. When patch 9.2 comes out, the same again. Either a big patch comes out or a big raid comes out. That is always hot time for making gold, and I would highly advise people to sort of try and plan ahead and see what's coming, read patch notes, this sort of thing, to get ahead of the game, as it's going to save you not only a lot of time and effort when that content comes out, but secondly, it's going to mean that you're ahead of 95% of the other people on your server, and you're going to be able to hit the ground running and hopefully make a killing. So there, guys, I know that was probably a lot to take in, and I know I've rambled on for a lot longer than I planned to, a good 25 minutes as of now, but I'm hoping there was some valuable information there for you, or at least you can take something from that to try and help you make some more gold in the future. If you're watching this on the day that I release it, big thank you to everybody that supported both myself and the channel over the last few weeks and months. Your support has been greatly appreciated. I'm going to take a break for a few days over Christmas now. If you're watching this video in the future, ignore this bit. You can click off, you can go do something else. But if you're watching this as it's come out, I'm going to take a few days off at Christmas now. I wish you the happiest of holiday seasons. Stay safe, and if you end up playing World of Warcraft all day, good luck making some gold. So then, guys, I've been Manthius, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.